Good evening. Today is Monday, December 10th, and I'll call the regular meeting of the Burnsville Planning Commission to order. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, audience. First item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes from city staff?
None from staff.
Any from the commission? I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
And a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
A motion made by Mr. Corey, seconded by Mr. Singh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Brings us to item number 2, which is approval of the minutes from the November 26, 2012 meeting. Any changes to the meeting minutes from the commission? See none from staff?
None from staff.
We'll look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And a second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Singh and seconded by Mr. Tahuri. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that motion also carries. Which brings us to item number 3, which is public hearing for Blythe Hospitality LLC for a preliminary and final plat for a 2-lot subdivision to be known as Waterford 3, located at 14201 Nicollet Avenue. Good evening, Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As indicated, this is a public hearing. This is a subdivision for a piece of property on Nicollet Avenue. Blythe Hospitality is the ownership group. You'll know the property. You'll know the property is Nicollet Inn. The application is simply for land division. There are no buildings, parking lots, or anything like that proposed at this time. You'll see a aerial photo of the property. Nicollet Avenue sits right here, and 35E sits right here. This is the exit ramp from 35E down to County Road 42. Here's a little bit different image of the property. You'll notice the hotel sits here. There's parking up front and behind, and this is green space. It's got substantial grades to it. There are retaining walls right here, 3 sets of retaining walls. The application is to subdivide this this triangular piece of property, about an acre of land, from the balance of the hotel site. This is part of a bigger project that will actually come in 3 stages through the Planning Commission and Council. Fairview Hospital is looking at expansions and projects in the future. To do that, they have approached Nicollet Inn or Blythe Hospitality for about an acre of land that they can use for any number of purposes, possibly just green space to accommodate some of their other projects. So this is the first in a number of steps that the Planning Commission will see. Again, here is the stub road, Nicollet Avenue. The hotel sits right here. The back parking lot is outlined here, and you can see right here the triangular shape known as Outlot A, which is an acre. You'll also notice the subdivision, besides dividing off Outlot A, it also takes care of this parcel of land. It is 0.89 acres of land. This is remnant right-of-way from I-35E that the hotel acquired. I couldn't tell you how long they've had it. It is not platted. This is a meets and bounds legal description compared to the lot and block for the balance of the site. So this is 2-phase actually. It allows this narrow piece to be combined with the rest of the hotel, while at the same time subdividing off the outlot. Again, there are no substantial changes to the site. The Lot 1, which is the remainder of the hotel, satisfies all green space setback requirements. Outlot A also satisfies green space requirements because it's 100%. That will remain outlot, which means it is unbuildable at this time until the potential owner, which is Fairview, would purchase it and reconfigure it with other parcels. We would hope to see that in the next few months. And again, the Planning Commission and Council will see both the road reconfiguration and any expansions taking place. With that, Commissioners, staff has no conditions at this time. We do have representatives from Fairview. Should you have questions that I can't answer, it is a public hearing, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you for Mr. Slaney. Are there questions for city staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll go to Mr. Singh and then we'll go to Mr. Corey.
Mr. Slania, I think this is a very simple request from the applicant. However, I'm concerned about a couple of things. Number one, if Fairview does not close their deal with the applicant, and or if they close it and they do not build or do not bring something to the Planning Commission and Council for their development, who will be? I'm sure Fairview will be responsible for the maintenance of this. So how do we guarantee that there is maintenance? Because you have a hotel next door, and you don't want weeds, brush to be growing too tall there and becomes unsightly. Any provision for that?
Good question, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The applicant and the potential buyer are looking to close yet in 2012. The plat would not necessarily be filed if the closing doesn't occur. So if the closing doesn't happen, the deal falls apart for whatever reason, the plat's not recorded, the property would still remain in the hotel's hands. If the buyer does purchase the land, it is subdivided, Fairview or whoever the buyer is would be responsible for the underlying maintenance, mowing, weed control, etc. We would treat it as if it was any other piece of property in town.
Thank you, Mr. Slania. Mr. Chairman, my other concern is the protection of that berm for the easement or the sidewalk. There's no guarantee that Fairview, because Fairview in their development would probably need to do some grading, and that can take care of the berm. Is there a problem if that happens?
From the city standpoint, there's not a problem. That is, as much as I can say, an issue between the buyer and the seller. Certainly the city understands where the seller's at and their intent, and we are not planning to move any more dirt than absolutely necessary. Moving dirt and realigning anything is time and money, and if we don't absolutely have to do it, we won't.
I think both Blythe Hospitality and Fairview have been very good citizens of our city, and I think I'll leave it in their good judgment to take care of that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Corey?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slania, it looks like there's development fees and storm sewer obligation and, park dedication fees. Is that correct? Would they be paid only upon the closing of the sale or up front, or how does that work?
They are paid at the time of getting the plat recorded.
Okay.
So the city would collect the fees whether development took place or not. Should the deal not happen and property's not recorded or replatted, the fees are not paid.
Thank you. Mr. Slaney, I got a couple questions. Can you point out on the map you have up right now where the berm that they're talking about is?
Yes. There's a significant grade change right up here, right off the back of this parking lot, and this sits up much higher.
Okay.
And from, not to put words in their mouth, but from a Blythe Hospitality standpoint, they view that as a sound buffer from the interstate. So the concerns they had would be substantially altering that area.
And so the road up on top, that's going to go up that hill?
That is correct. What we know, let me see.
I mean, that's a significant hill right now.
It is. Trying to think. What we know right now, and again, the details of this will be sorted out in the next few weeks. We do expect an extension of Fairview Drive coming down from the hospital to connect to this point. It will likely have a number of curves, an S-curve, if you will, so it would not run directly along this property line up to this street. There would be there would be a shift to the north, and it would be pushed farther away from that property line.
So, following up on Mr. Singh's comment, what concerns me is when we separate this out, they're two different tax parcels.
Correct.
And if somebody fails to pay taxes on that smaller parcel, it reverts back to the county or city,
Correct.
and then we're responsible for maintenance on it.
It would take quite a while for that to happen, but eventually it would revert back to the county. Whether it ended up back in the city's lap or not, to be honest, it's completely vegetated right now. I'm not sure how much maintenance is going on there currently.
Well, I know we've discussed this with previous properties about cautious to divide them up because of that issue of if it's an unbuildable spot,
Correct.
it'd be easy just to not pay the taxes and not have that expense on the books.
I can say from staff standpoint, we've been working with Fairview on the greater project for quite a while. We're confident it's going through, and again, we think Fairview's a good community citizen.
And I agree. I'm just I'm not so concerned about who it is, but treating everybody fairly.
Staff had the same discussion, and in a different circumstance, we may have a different recommendation.
Okay. So, pulling out your crystal ball, when Fairview comes forward with something, will that outlot be platted into their?
Most likely.
Okay. So, if this all happens the way we think it will, it won't be kind of that standalone parcel.
Correct. If all things go as scheduled, it wouldn't be an outlaw for very long.
Okay. I think that's all I had about it. Any other discussion?
Chair, I don't think we have to worry too much about Fairview.
Well,
The amount of business we have done with Fairview in this city.
And they are a good neighbor, but
That's what I said.
I'd like to treat everybody the same way and kind of put blinders on when it comes to who owns the property. But I agree with you. This is part of a grander vision, and hopefully we'll see it all the way through the process. This is a public hearing. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak to this matter, now is your time to come forward. And seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open up for any further discussion. Mr. Singh?
Mr. Chair, I've already asked my questions, and I think I'm satisfied
Okay.
with the response from staff. I think this is a very simple matter, and I'm glad that Fairview is going to take possession of that outlot parcel. And as Mr. Slania said, pretty soon we might see some movement, and that would be great. So I'll be supporting this
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
application. Thank
Mr. Corey?
I guess I would concur. I think, getting this all aligned so that Fairview can proceed with how the project they're looking at, I think is just a benefit for Burnsville, and it should be a first step and hopefully concluding with some additional building and some movement forward.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. I too am in full support of this. I'm glad that Fairview decided to invest more energy and dollars in the city of Burnsville and expand their development that they have here. They've been a great neighbor, and that's a great area of our city for the medical community. With that, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the preliminary and final plat for a two-lot subdivision to be known as Waterford 3, located at 14201 Nicollet Avenue, as proposed and as submitted by Blythe Hospitality, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Tahuri. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. Thank you, and this will go to the City Council next Tuesday, the 18th of December. So good luck. Which brings us to item number 4, which is another public hearing for Bidapur Properties Investment LLC for a PUD amendment for a building addition to the India Palace Restaurant at 1905 County Road 42. And Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, again, this is a public hearing. The property we're discussing is right at the corner of County Road 42 and 5. It is currently India Palace. The owner-operators have found this location very successful. They are in the need of additional seating for their customers and are proposing a building addition along the east property right in this area for additional seating. The square footage, right now the building exists at 2,800 square feet. The building addition will be 3,400, so it will be doubling the existing property, or excuse me, building size. The site exists as a PUD and dates back to the original development when this was developed as a Boston Market. This adjacent property is also included in that PUD. This vacant Walgreens building was constructed just prior to all that. You'll notice there are shared access agreements. These are not public streets, public roads. They are private roads shared between all three property owners and actually the adjacent property owner to the south that excuse me, happens to be the city of Burnsville. So access is shared privately between those property owners. There are currently no access points off of 42 or 5. The applicant is not proposing that in the future either. And if I can just jump to some of the details here. With a PUD amendment, we discussed the deviations and the benefits. In this situation, we've got successful business. We'd like to keep them in Burnsville, keep them growing and expanding. The sole deviation requested by the applicant is the trash enclosure that's located on the south side of the building, which would be in this location right here. Is not up to current standards. It does not have a roof on it. It's simply a fence with the dumpster in it. Staff feels with the investment into the building, we'd like to see that trash enclosure with a roof consistent with the ordinance as part of the PUD. The very positive aspect of the project, the parking is satisfied, the green space is satisfied, the setbacks are satisfied. One important thing to note on this image, I believe it comes out better in your packet. It may be a little washed out on the screen. Again, 42 is here and 5 is over here. The building addition is coming out here. The existing building sits right here. The parking lot is being shifted to the east to accommodate for this building addition. So the parking stalls on the east side of the property line are right up against the 10-foot setback. Then we've got the parking stalls, and then we've got the drive lane running through there. To accommodate for simply the tightness of the space, the green space, the screening, everything that's needed, these easterly parking stalls will be converted to one-way. So they will be installed at a 60-degree angle. You would access the site from the south end. There is standard parking along the west, standard parking along the north. There's a stretch here that would be simply angled, one-way angled, and then when you get behind the building again, those are standard stalls. That just helps satisfy the dimensions needed to fit everything in. The required parking is 70 stalls. The applicant is providing 73 stalls. As I said, the green space within the site, the perimeter green space around the building is all met. The property was platted back in 1995 when the PUD was originally established. It is consistent with the zoning. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's also consistent with the original PUD as the property was constructed as a Boston Market, converted to honey baked ham, and then on to India Palace. There may have been another user in there somewhere that I don't recall. I'd also like to touch on the exterior materials of the building. You'll see on the image in front of you, this is the existing building. There's an entrance point here. There's an entrance point to the north right here. You'll see the limited amount of dining the space has compared to the large back room, kitchen, storage, etc. The addition sits right here, runs more north-south in a rectangle with seating. The applicant is able to match the brick, stone, and ephes that are on the existing building. So as with the city, the applicant's intent is this does not look like an afterthought addition, but it does match all the materials and looks original as with the rest of the building. The building materials are satisfied. As I said, staff has a concern and a condition related to the trash enclosure. Otherwise, staff is supportive of the application. Bruce Knudsen with Knudsen Architects is available for questions. Bruce is the designer on the project and I think can try to represent the owner's intent, and any questions that I can't answer, hopefully we can get through together. Mr. Chair, it is a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Are there questions from the commission? Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slania, can you tell us, if you know, the current seating, what is it now, and what it will be with the addition?
I do not know. I think the applicant's representative can get that. It may be in the materials. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
We'll see if we can have any more questions for him, then we'll invite him up.
No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
It's just a matter of
Cheers.
know, if something is going up and we are adding to business in the city. Sometimes it's nice to know that they're going from 100 to 200 or what the case may be.
Anything else, Mr. Singh?
No, I support the one condition that is there, consistent with other businesses, and the trash enclosure, the materials on the roof. I support that condition.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. As far as the operation, the function at the restaurant, that doesn't change. It means non-liquor. It's not going from non-liquor to non-liquor, or it's basically the same.
There are no other changes proposed. I can address part of that. The total proposed seating will be 180. What I'm not sure of is
What is it?
where
now?
they sit today.
That's okay.
And one more question I have: as far as the exterior package, are they additional lighting or signage proposed for this facility, or
None proposed
everything
at
the
this
same?
time.
No, I have no further question.
Mr. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Slaney, as far as the trash area to meet the requirements, what exactly would need to be done, and I guess what's there and what needs to be done?
Certainly. What exists is a simple wood fence that's probably about 6 feet tall that screens in the dumpster. To be compliant with the ordinance, the way the condition's written, the fence would have to be eliminated. It could either be a freestanding structure in the same area, or it could be actually attached to the building. It would need to be brick, block, and or EFIS, or a combination of that with a roof. And that would be compliant with if it were a ground up projects, that's what the ordinance would require.
When was, I assume, was it in compliance when it originally was built, and I assume that changed, or if you know?
I don't know. I can tell you the roof requirement has been around over 10 years now. When that actually took effect, I don't know. I think part of it is not to play both sides, but it's not a highly visible dumpster. If you're on 42 or 5, you're not going to drive by and notice it. It's in a somewhat concealed location, and it's I'm sure it was just overlooked.
Thank you.
I got a couple questions for you. It appears on the new roof that there's nothing hiding the air conditioner. Is that correct?
Correct. Actually, the existing units, I'll use this image the best I can. There are 2 existing units on the building. That does have a slightly higher parapet wall, but they are still visible. This new equipment will be 1 handler versus 2. There will be no kitchen area in this portion of the building. The applicant has agreed to paint that. It'll be painted similar to the EFIS color, so it'll be somewhat of a cream or light colored, so it doesn't stand out or jump out at you. That is consistent with the ordinance when it's a building expansion.
That they don't need to screen it?
Correct.
Okay. Going back to the trash enclosure, when I drove by this property the other day, the dumpster was out in the parking lot, and the trash enclosure was filled with bags of garbage.
Okay.
I guess I would like to see the applicant clean that up, and maybe the city make sure they do that. It's one of the downfalls when you come before us is we travel out and look at those sites and seem to notice things like that. And then the final question I had is there going to be 2 entrances to the restaurant?
Yes. There will be, I'm not right now there's 2. I'm not sure if
Or excuse me, 3, I guess.
3, unless something changes internally on how they operate, there will be an additional entrance added right here. They do have a hostess stand, if you will. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to direct everyone through that door or if that's even been determined by the applicant yet.
So, with that, I noticed they have a dance floor, so I'm just kind of curious if they're thinking about kind of creating that as a private party area or a
It has
reception hall.
It
type
has
of-
the ability to serve a number of purposes for them. The main intent is additional standard customer seats, but they have the ability, should they have a big party or reception or like that, to close it, not close it off, but separate it.
And that's within the ordinance for that site?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Any other questions? I'll invite Mr. Knutson up. If you could come up.
Great.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. I'm Bruce Knudsen, President Bruce Knudsen Architects. Our office is 1000 Boone Avenue North, Golden Valley, Minnesota.
Well, thanks for coming tonight.
My pleasure.
We had one question about, do we know the current seating capacity?
I think you have an A9 sheet in your packet, which I think is the one actually that's on the screen. Oh, A1.
A1, yeah.
We've actually changed them out. So the left side, the existing, has 80 seats right now.
Oh, wow.
And the right-hand side, as drawn with the dance floor, is only 72 seats.
Okay.
But if we fill in the tables to fill in the dance floor, then we gain 100 seats. So that's where we have the 108 total.
So they're more than doubling their capacity, which is...
And the intent was very well covered in that they need day-to-day expansion, but they're getting a lot of requests for weddings and high school football banquets or softball banquets and that kind of stuff. And so the idea would be if there was a wedding or a banquet, those people actually would come through the third entrance.
Okay.
But during the day, that would probably be more closed off, and everybody would come through the front door and the hostess stand.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add? We'll go to questions then.
Staff we've been on almost daily contact, so.
Mr. Corey?
Thank you. The request for the upgrading of the trash area, do you have any idea of how much extra cost that would be or how difficult that would be?
I think we would do it in a heartbeat. Okay. That's not a problem.
That's all I have.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Knudsen.
Thank you very much for your time.
This is a public hearing. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. If anyone is wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward now. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open up for discussion. Mr. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would enthusiastically support this addition with the condition. It sounds like that is easily done. That's why I asked the question. Anytime that we have expansion in Burnsville, especially along the 42 area with a successful business, as we've seen from the past in this area, there have been a number of businesses there. So if we have one that's obviously doing well, I think we should support it wholeheartedly. It seems like it's a great benefit to the city, and I would throw all my support behind it at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Anyone else? Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would concur with Commissioner Corey. I think this is a very successful business. I have gone in there a couple of times since it was established, and I think it's a well-run business. And as Commissioner Corey said, when the businesses in Burnsville are successful and we can support them, we need to do that. We'll bring in more people and more money will be spent in Burnsville, and hopefully they may even hire more people, and so it will be a win-win situation, and as such I will support this application.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Jagger?
I also myself very supportive of this project. I think this is a great addition, business to the area. One item I want to make sure that we are doubling up the seating and consequently the parking number of parking, the traffic also increase accordingly. Just as long as the city are on top of it to make sure the access in and out the site, the flow of traffic is well considered, I'm 100% in supportive of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Turian. Maybe I'll just ask Chris, that was a traffic study done, or wasn't it big enough to?
Traffic study wasn't done just based on the size of the expansion or the impacts. The positive aspect from staff standpoint is there is no direct spillover out onto 42 or 5 because of those private streets. There may be some stacking or queuing, but that's not happening on a highly traveled area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slania. Anything else? I'm very supportive of this. It's a busy intersection in Burnsville, and so it's nice to see that it's being upgraded a little bit, and I'm glad that they've decided to make it not look like an add-on, but integrate it into the existing building, and I'm sure Mr. Knutson has a lot to do with that, so thank you for... So, and I'm going to have to go try it because I haven't tried it yet, so...
Oh, you
we'll eat
wouldn't
there.
regret it. It's very good.
I'm sure I won't regret it, but
And Mr. Chair, if you are having a party at home, they will deliver if you want to order from them.
oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. Right now I have to travel up to Egan, but anyway. I'll look for a motion for this application.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council the approval of the Bidipur Properties Investment LLC PUD amendment for a building addition to the India Palace Restaurant at 1905 County Road 42 with the one condition. The condition being the applicant shall reconstruct the trash enclosure with materials compatible to the building including doors and a roof pursuant to section 1019(1)(b).
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Corey. Motion made by Mr. Singh, seconded by Mr. Corey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the motion carries. This will go to the City Council next Tuesday, the 18th of December. So, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knutson, for coming.
Thank you,
I
Bruce.
have to go on record. I have to compliment Mr. Singh on his clothes this evening.
That's right.
Nobody informed me it was the gray suit, yellow tie.
You guys didn't get the email.
Oh, silly me, I wore my my tie today. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Knutson.
again for your time.
Thank you, Bruce.
Brings us to item number 5, which is not a public hearing. The City of Burnsville discussed single-family metal roofing, and we didn't get any attachments or advance notice of what we're going to discuss. So, Mr. Slania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Again, it is not a public hearing. This is actually a item that was on or is on the Commission for the 2012 Work Plan. It's been around for a couple years. Staff is noticing a uptick in the amount of single-family residential metal roofing that's out there. From a sustainability standpoint, it's got many aspects to it. Longevity, it's creating less waste. You're not going through asphalt shingles every few years. It's also got great impacts for efficiency in your home, snow load, ice dams, and all those other things. Staff started this simply because the ordinance is silent on the use of single-family materials. The industrial districts, the commercial districts specifically spell out that metal roofs are permitted. They tell you what's permitted, they tell you what's not. In the single-family residential area, it's silent. Staff has been going down the road of permitting these metal roofs. Whether it's covered in the ordinance or not, it needs to comply with the current state building code, and the products that we've been approving have. Staff reviewed a number of other cities, and I'll get this image in front of the commission. 9 communities both in Dakota County and around the metro in similar size and demographic of Burnsville. I talked to a staff member from each of these cities. They currently do and continue to allow metal roofs on single-family homes when those permits come in. So the next question was, what types of standards or regulations do they have? None of them have any of those in effect at this time. Most of them are, again, seeing an uptick in the use of metal roofs, but not drastically. That may have, that will certainly revolve around the lifetime of the home and when those existing asphalt shingles come up. All of them were quick to point out that they are going to, anything they would approve needs to and would have to comply with the building code, state building code. So at this point, we have, for a number of years, been permitting the metal roofs. We do not have not, and hope we don't have any issue with that. Besides the building code, we also have a clause in the ordinance that requires any applicant, similar to trash enclosures, that they use compatible materials. So we're not looking for corrugated or the ribbed metal. We're requiring that it any roof system have some type of coat or finish on it. Not that you're applying that in the field. We're not spray painting anything in the field, but that it's coming out of the factory. It's showing up on site with a baked paint on it, a coating or a finish or something like that. That it's good quality. We've reached this point without any further discussion or language in the ordinance. At this point, staff is suggesting we leave the ordinance as is, avoid the time and the effort of a ordinance amendment. If issues arise in the future, we can certainly come back to it. But at this point, all of staff, the Planning Commission, would be of the understanding that we are permitting these. They do need to be high quality and leave it at that. We can certainly do more research, dig through some additional items as the commission needs. This is where staff ended up. And I'm open to comments or questions or whatever discussion you'd like to go with.
Thank you, Mr. Salinia. A couple questions, and I'll go to the rest of the commission. You said specific standards in the zoning ordinance. Did they call out metal roofs, or were they absent?
They were absent.
Okay, so there was no mention of them.
There
like-
was
like
nothing.
ours.
When I started the process, I was curious or thinking there would be a minimum gauge of metal used or something like that would put a parameter on it, and none of the communities have gone down that road yet.
I guess the question would be: do they mention that metal roofs are allowed, or they just are silent on metal roofs?
They are silent on it,
Okay.
which was a surprise to me. Second of all, if they did permit it, or if they did spell it out in the ordinance, did they have anything accompanying that?
And in our ordinance now, if it's an industrial business building, we call out the thickness.
We do.
Painted or
We do not call it the thickness. Let me find. What it says. For commercial, it discusses commercial grade asphalt shingles, wood shingles, standing seam metal, slate, tile, or copper.
so that's it. And so you've mentioned that the city has approved some of these. Is there any way for me to put metal on my roof and not come to the city?
You would need no, because we would still consider it a new roof.
And you need a permit for a new roof.
You would need a permit for a new roof.
So there's no way that somebody could say, well, I put metal on and there's nothing in the ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The same applicable building standards or building permits apply.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Corey?
Well, thank you. I guess I have a comment more than questions. I'm a minimalist at heart, so I guess if what we're approving or the city is approving is regulated by the building code, I guess to me that should be the standard, and if it's up to building code, then it should be approved. I like the, I guess not requirement, but that you're having them, have the baked on finished. And to me, if it's up to the standards of the building code and it has the baked on finish, and you need to have the permit before you put it on, so somebody's just not doing it, I'm very satisfied with that, and I guess that would be my position at this point in time, without any further indication that there's specific issues or problems. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding Commissioner Corey's statement, I wonder if I got him right. The ordinance doesn't mention metal roof. So I think staff has just been going with what they think is right. And we need to put, I am of the opinion that we need to put something in the ordinance that addresses the use of metal roofs. However, I have a question for Mr. Slania. We see, if you go to Florida, one state that I know, many of the cities have metal roofs. One question always passed through my mind: is there a problem with lightning and metal roof? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Commissioners, I cannot say that came up in my research. For a while, for as long as I know, we've allowed metal roofs on multifamily residential and commercial. And sometimes those reach heights much greater than a single family home. I don't think there's any direct correlation.
Mr. Corey has something to add.
Oh, I just was going to respond to Mr. Singh's comment in this. I guess I disagree with the premise that staff is just doing what it thinks is right, in the sense that it's doing, from my understanding, is it's approving what's regulated by the code. So it does have a minimal standard, I'm guessing, from the building code that prescribes what it can be. Correct? And so once it meets that minimal standard, which is typically what a code would do, then after that, it's approved. And so I guess I assume that the building code is done to standards that are what is needed for a single-family home for roofing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be regulated that way. And so to me, that's the minimalistic standard that is met, and then therefore would be allowed.
Sorry, I thought you were going to add something about the lightning.
Oh, no, I don't know anything.
If we are going to have metal roofs, the ordinance right now addresses shingles and these other types of roofs. And metal roofs is a different animal altogether. And if we are going to allow them, we should mention them in the ordinance as one of the options that people have. I feel that if we do some more research, we may have to go beyond Minnesota. I know that sometimes conditions are not the same. For example, in Florida, the conditions are not the same with our snow and those kinds of things. But if we go out of Minnesota, it doesn't seem, right now, nobody in Minnesota is mentioned in the ordinance. Or we go to the manufacturer for some guidance. You might learn something from them that we can put in our ordinance. The grade, for example, the baked down finish, I understand that's a good one. Even though that can go into the ordinance. I mean, we will not look too positive if people call and ask for guidance. They want to put metal roof, and we don't have any guidance to give them, except the whatever we have for shingles and other things. I think we may get more requests in the future for metal roofs. I don't know how many more, but I think we need to be prepared. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
I just want to respond. I sorry to budge in front of Ben, but I should have mentioned this earlier. The zoning ordinance doesn't discuss shingles either. It states that the roof
They're allowed.
materials have to meet the building code and they have to be compatible with surrounding buildings. And everybody's used shingles, so no one ever second guessed that.
That's, thank you, Mr. Salinia. That's a good point. Mr. Tahiri?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a lot of experience in metal roof and the design of it. Basically, last 15, 20 years, I did a lot of school projects. I think I'm able to answer a lot of your questions. That's why I'm sitting. Maybe to start with, respond to SLC question about the grade of the metal roof. They basically go by the gauge of the metal. What we considered in some selection of the metal roof, we went by the heavy gauge and light gauge. More of the industrial projects or even military projects that I've done, we went with the heavier gauge, anywhere from even 14 gauge metal roofing versus lighter gauge of 18 or even 22 gauge of lighter commercial, let's say SA gas station or PB gas station to that level. So one of the questions as far as the grade, the gauge of the metal roof will determine the heaviness and lightness. If you don't mind, I can speak some of these
Kind of an
concerns
open
that you guys
discussion.
have.
You have done very well so far. I mean, that's good.
Number two, one of the big, not number two, but one of the big concern about metal roof that I dealt with, which is quite challenging, is not so much what building code allows, is what how you design the technical attachments of the roof, because metal has a great tendency of expansion, contraction, especially in our state, which is the worst state there is. We have we have a difference of 200 degrees from one day of the year to another day of the year. So we are in the worst state as far as the expansion and contraction of roof. So the edging connection is extremely crucial. I've had projects that the edge fall apart after a year or even months, and some last forever. Basically, manufacturer determine what the standard that we're talking about of design should be, whether it's, again, light commercial, heavy commercial. In this matter, I suggest to the city that we actually go to the common manufacturer like Firestone. They do quite a bit of metal roof in the state of Minnesota. They will come up with a standard design, and the city can implement it into an ordinance for single family, probably certain height, 2-3 stories, or 1 story. What type of design they recommend, and we architects always go by their recommendations unless we think we have to go above and beyond and exceed. We have rejected some of the manufacturer recommendation too. Again, that some recommendation could be commercialized. We don't know, so we have to be on top of that it works. As far as the lighting, that never been a concern that the metal roof could be subject to fire due to lightning or bolting or any weather condition. The pre-finished material they use on them, the way they bake them, the way they manufacture them, resist a lot of these kind of incident and contacts. with the lighting. I mean, I can go on for a long time on this. I'd be more than happy to help Chris and maybe come up with some kind of a standard.
So
But again, we are actually think of it this way: we are connecting a heavy piece of metal into a wood plate of a single family. So the connection design detail is very crucial, and whether we call it the building code or the building code has to take a look at it and think of it as the best way to accomplish that.
So let me ask you, Mr. Terry, are you wishing the city put some of that stuff in their ordinances, or just leave it the way it is and let the building code?
I would suggest the city sit down with the manufacturer that actually they manufacture these roofs, and sit down with them, so they assure us that the technical standard design they're coming up with or they're recommending for single family is warranted for 20 years or 15 years. And once we have these two components together, the right design coincide with a manufacturer warranty, then we are 70% safe. I hate to say 100%. Then we know the design works, because if it doesn't, their warranty would fall apart as well too.
And if I can interject, I think, or I know at least thus far, that's what our building officials reviewing when these plans come in, is their longevity and the manufacturer's recommendations or details or so forth. We, again, simply because planning's not covering it doesn't mean somebody else isn't checking it when it comes in for permit. But this is a good discussion to have, and we can certainly work it into the planning, the zoning.
I mean, the city doesn't call for standards on toilets or sinks or stairs. That's all handled by the building code?
Correct.
Okay. Mr.
Well, the city actually has the reference to the building code as when it comes to the section, so they can always refer to UBC or IBC section 3, such and such and such, to meet their minimum requirement. So once the city refers to that part of the building code, then that satisfies the city ordinance as well.
That is true.
We'll go to Mr. Corey.
And I guess I agree with everything Mr. Tahiri, I think, says, or most of it, in the sense of, how it's manufactured, how it's put together, the joining of the two. I'm just wondering if that's, and it sounds like it's a building that is or should be covered by the building code, and I'm just wondering if that should be a zoning ordinance specification as opposed to a building code specification, and if the city is essentially approving everything that meets the building code, and assuming that the building code meets the specifications, then essentially they are approving or considering what Mr. Tahiri is talking about. I guess that's how I'm putting it together.
Commissioners, I do have a thought, because right now, to Commissioner Tahiri's point, the ordinance just says building code. So what we can do, it doesn't have to be a separate ordinance amendment or separate work session with the Planning Commission, but next time we go through any housekeeping or anything like that, we can be more specific to say such and such chapter, section of the building code, even, whatever year building code we're referencing. That way, if someone does call and say, hey, my neighbor's putting up a metal roof, does this comply? We have some reference to say it complies with the zoning because it complies with this other document.
Well, so the one thought I have about that is, are the corrugated, I don't know what you call those, ripple, are those allowed under the building code? Because if we start pointing at building code that allows more than what we kind of envisioned,
It would not for residential.
Okay.
For single family residential, I'm sure it has
For livestock?
something. I'm sure it has use somewhere.
They use it for barns.
But do you understand my
Yeah.
point is, if we're pointing to something that allows more than what we really want,
Right. That would be right now. That's what we're using as our standard. We're just not
the building code?
the building code. We're just not being that specific to the section in the chapter.
Okay. Did you have anything more? I'll go to Ben in a minute.
I have
And-
one other.
I'll go to you in a minute. When I first read this, I thought we really should call out metal roofs and make them allowable, and if we do, then put standards on them. But hearing that we don't do that for other things, as far as buildings, I still would like to see them called out as being allowed, instead of totally silent. But I think I'm on Mr. Corey's side of the fence now of saying we shouldn't put those standards in the zoning ordinance, because it doesn't sound like we do that for other things surrounding single family homes. We kind of leave it up to the building code, and as the building code evolves and changes, then the city doesn't have to update our zoning ordinances. So that's kind of where I'm sitting now, but it's just a discussion, and this isn't an action item, I don't believe either. But Mr. Tahiri?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like we have quite a bit of homework to do on this before we even make it to next base here. One other concern issue with the metal roof are penetrations. The details of penetration. In shingles roof, we can just run a pipe right through hard stack and just seal around it and get it over. With metal roof, we have to do all the attachments, bolts, nuts and bolts. There's no gluing or there's no any other kind of attachment. So that's one of the questions I have for a small house or small the roof for a house. If we have all these pipes and all the items going through the roof, that could be also part of the city ordinance to make sure, especially when it comes to the fireplace.
But again, wouldn't that type of language be included in the building code?
Yeah, wouldn't that be a code?
I don't know. I'm just, and maybe that's something that city staff could research.
Well, building code, we have two building code, IBC, International Building Code. We also have residential building code. I can look into it, see if there is any indications in residential building code, which is national as well, that deal with metal roof. And if they do, we comply with them. It would be
Correct.
It would be the same whether we do it here or in Florida. As long as we take into consideration a variety of temperature difference of this expansion contraction, then we should be all right with that.
Commissioners, I can certainly work with Commissioner Tahiri. We have staff that can do this homework, and we can get that to you. I'll bring this back in a month or two with language as to what we found, and if it is a simple housekeeping, referencing more in the building code, we can do that. If it gets more complicated, we can talk about that when I bring it back.
Let's go to Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to thank Commissioner Tahiri for his expertise in this metal roof matter. I also agree with Commissioner Corey that this should be included in the building, thing, not so much in the zoning. And I would think that staff can come up with some things, and when you do your house cleaning, changing those things, we can add it in there. However, I, in the planning commission, would like to see it before.
Certainly.
Just FYI, even that this would be included, and if we need to tweak it or just be aware that it will be included, that would be helpful.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Salinia, but all zoning changes come before us before they go to council?
Correct.
Correct, okay. Anything else, Mr. Singh?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, let me summarize. I think what we've been talking about is we kind of wanted city staff to take up maybe just a little bit deeper look into this, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but it seems like the consensus is that we don't include specific language in there, but maybe just allow them and or reference building code. But we'll kind of let the city staff take a stab at that, and we don't want to make it too drastically different from the rest of our ordinances in the city, but just maybe bring some light into that metal roofs are allowed.
Not only metal, but asphalt shingles as well, and just be as clear as we can be.
And the last thing we want is somebody to come to the city for their newfangled roof and not have it approved, or have it approved when it shouldn't have been approved. But it doesn't sound like it's been an issue to this point. But things evolve, and
Yes.
the price of metal roofing will probably continue to fall in the future and make it more comparable with asphalt. I know right now it's still quite an investment if you're re-roofing your house in metal, but like all things, that'll change over time as oil prices go up and asphalt shingles go up. Mr. Singh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I think Commissioner Tahiri has made some very significant points, talking about the gauge, talking about the piping that has to be done, and we need to give consideration to those things. You don't want to be very specific, Mr. Chair, but I think I would recommend that probably Commissioner Tahiri and staff, do some talking, and we can draw from his expertise, and let staff bring it back to us and see what we can, come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I agree with that. I guess it'd be interesting to find out what building code has to say about those issues, and
Yes.
Mr. Tahiri can kind of be our liaison from the building code up to layman speak. So, if the city staff wants to look into it, and then let Mr. Tahiri find out about it before our meeting, and then he can speak to us. And
We'll get on the same page and get back to the planning commission.
okay. Thanks for doing this, Mr. Slaney. I know your schedule is fully packed the way it is, but
Well, I feel committed because I was the one that suggested this be on the work plan,
Yes,
and
I remember that.
thought
Good.
maybe we should get to the bottom of it.
And so, Mr. Slaney, speaking of our work plan, and I'm kind of throwing this at you, but this is our last meeting of 2012, and maybe we should revisit our work plan and see how we're doing on that. And
We will. I will get it on the next agenda. If we run out of time, we can postpone it, but at least it'll be on the next agenda.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Slaney. Any other discussion about the roofing? If not, we'll move to item number 6, which are updates, and this is a time for the Planning Commission to kind of have some informal updates of what they're going on, or the city can update us on projects. The one note I have is our next Planning Commission meeting will be on the 14th of January. Hopefully it'll be warmer than it is today, but I doubt it. So our next meeting, which is has been canceled, the December meeting. I'm sorry, I don't know the date.
The next one would fall on the 24th.
20, yeah.
So we've historically not had the second one in December, and just start fresh with the new year.
Are there any other updates from the commission?
Not an update, Mr. Chair, but since it's our last meeting of the year, I just want to say to staff and to other commissioners, in whatever way we celebrate the holiday, have a great one, and all the best for 2013. That goes to all the great people of the city of Burnsville. Happy holidays, and all the best for 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I too, happy holidays, and I hope everybody has a safe holiday season, especially if they're traveling for those holidays. Anyone else? Mr. Slaney?
I do have one, commissioners. I am Sorry to say, I know I'll miss him. Mr. Strelo has taken another position.
Deb informed us
Oh,
last time.
that's right. Okay.
Normally, he would have been here tonight,
Yes,
right?
he would have. We have the engineering department's going to take a few months and sort that out as to the position, the responsibilities, and so forth. So I think you'll see a new face in January. We're going to use Bolton and Mink, which is a engineering consultant firm in Burnsville. They're very involved with city engineering projects, so that person will sit in when we have traffic or stormwater, things like that. The items Jeremy covered, will have someone from Bolton and Mink sit in.
Okay.
So you will have a new face probably at the next meeting.
Sounds good. Any other construction updates or?
Not that I can think of, other than I think 2013 is going to start off with a lot of big, exciting projects coming our way.
It's good, and it's good that the people are investing their time and energy into
Yes,
Burnsville
it is.
projects. So hopefully, we'll get you guys busier. Anyone else,
So I'm sorry,
Mr. Fury?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next meeting would be January 14th then?
Correct. And we received a draft agenda.
Oh, yeah, there. Okay. I missed that.
So yeah, Monday, January 14th in 2013. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn
So moved.
in a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
A motion made by Mr. Corey, seconded by Mr. Singh to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you and good night.